I was going to give you crap. I was going to be like, so you left the music industry to go into law. Was it for more cocaine? Hey, this is Party Like a Rockstar podcast, and I'm your host, Joel. Today's episode is brought to you by Misha's Kind Foods. They're an LA-based small business making the world's finest non-dairy cheese on the market today. They're lactose-free, paleo, keto, kosher, Parev, and 100% vegan. If you like what you see, check out the next video. If you like this video, please subscribe and like by clicking the little round button on the bottom right. To learn more about me or our other guests on the show, go to joelrohde.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok. The handle is Joel Rohde. If you haven't already read my book, Memoir of a Roadie, it's now available through Amazon and paperback Kindle or as an audiobook. I hope you enjoy the show. All right, let me introduce you two guys and we'll get going. Al Staehley was in the Staehely Brothers, the Nick Gravenites, John Cipollina Band, and Spirit. Songs he's written have been recorded by Keith Moon, Bobbie Gentry, Patti Dahlstrom, who I looked up, who was absolutely gorgeous, and she was such a good singer. So off the bat, thank you, man. I got a chance to listen to somebody I'd never heard of. I really liked her, and a hell of a songwriter in her own right. So throw her some love. Nick Gravenites, John Cipollina, Peter Cox, and Marty Balin. In addition to performing, Staehley has brought music publishing and music business law has taught music publishing and music business law at both the Art Institute of Houston and St. Thomas University. William Garrett Walden, known as W.G. Snuffy Walden, is an American musician and composer of film and television soundtracks. Other than being a buddy here of Al, Walden is an Emmy Award winner for the theme music to The West Wing and has been nominated for numerous Emmys throughout his career. In addition, he has received 26 BMI Awards. Some of the other shows he's scored themes for are The Wonder Years, Roseanne, Ellen, My So-Called Life, and Felicity. So welcome, fellas. And
hey,
so looking back here, I realize you guys have actually known each other a really long time. I was trying to put it together, but did you guys meet in 1974? Or did you know each other prior to?
I don't remember the exact year. Do you, Snuffy? In fact, I was trying to think who actually introduced us in the first place. Was it Austin Godsey or?
I think it was either Austin or it was Nancy Nash, one of the two.
Ah, okay. Well,
Your brother's girlfriend.
That's right, my brother's live-in girlfriend at the time. I don't remember who introduced us, but we started playing together. This was after Staehely Brothers, which my brother and I did an album after we left Spirit, the Staehely Brothers, but Snuffy had, I think you'd recently left Stray Dog, or that
Right.
group had broken up, which was a really cool band on Emerson, Lake and Palmer's Manticore Records.
Right.
And so I was bound and determined to get a solo deal. And so instead keep joining bands that break up. And little did I know what I was in for on that journey, but Snuffy joined me on a big part of that journey, playing gigs around LA. And Starwood is one club we used to play when that used to be the big deal down on Santa Monica Boulevard and Crescent Heights. And we used to play down at some of the beach clubs in Redondo and Hermosa. And we played a gig or two in Colorado and up in the Bay Area.
So would you play bass, Al?
I played some, but really most of the time, because I was writing songs at that time to try to get a solo deal, and we're not as much rock oriented as say the ones I wrote for Spirit, even though we did in the live shows some of the Spirit songs that I wrote. I wanted to play rhythm guitar. So Baylor Hildebrand was a guy really good bass player that played with us most of that time. And then I'd pick up the bass and play on Cadillac Cowboys and some of the ones that I played bass on in Spirit. But mostly I played mostly acoustic
guitar. Yeah, mostly acoustic. Yeah.
You're acoustic and everything I found. So not that you can't play other stuff, but that's what I was seeing. So Were you guys just like the battle of the guitars on stage together?
Not at all. You know,
No.
the funny thing was, I was purely electric guitar player. Then when I started scoring television, I borrowed my acoustic guitar to do my first TV show. So no, Al was the only acoustic guitar player on that stage, and I was the loud guy because they're always asking to turn down.
No, I tell you what, there's no way I could compete as a guitar player with Snuffy. If I was going to stay in the business, I knew I had to write a song and sing it. But we always had good guys playing with us. Sometimes on drums, it was Curly Smith, who had been my drummer back in Texas before I came to LA. And in fact, that's how I ended up in Spirit, because he had joined Mark Andes and Jay Ferguson when they left to start JoJo Gunne. And so Mark Andes and those guys introduced me to Ed Cassidy, John Locke, Randy California, and that's when I started rehearsing with them and ended up joining that band. But then Curly played with us sometime. Who else played drums with us sometimes, Snuffy?
I'm trying to remember. I can picture him. But Curly, you know, it was Curly and Mark Olson and Vaylor and Al, you know, that I remember as the main section behind you.
Actually, later on, now that I think about it, and Mark Singer played drums.
Oh, Mark Singer, of course, yes.
And we had a lot of good times with Mark. We're still in touch with Mark. In fact, I went to his wedding in England a few years ago.
He was a big old, tall, curly-headed boy, smacked those drums.
And then Al Garth played sax and violin. By that time, he had left Loggins and Messina. So whatever point he left them, he started playing with us, and was an incredible double to have a guy who can play sax and play violin. I mean, I don't know anybody else that does that. And for some reason that maybe Snuffy can explain to me, or some musicologist can explain to me, whatever song a sax doesn't fit on, a fiddle does.
Fiddle will.
and vice versa. I don't know. I don't know the reason for that.
You know what's funny is a tangent, but it was I watched the other day, it was Kenny Loggins performing on, you know, Daryl's House. Have you guys watched that now? I'm assuming you have. It's it's so good. It's so good. But Loggins wrote Danny's song when he was in high school, is what he says in the episode. I'm kind of like, wow, you know. You hear about the Neil Young
song, you got to use it, you know.
You have what?
If it's a good song, got to keep it around.
Yeah, well, he says he's like, yeah, and then I've had to play it all these years, and, you know. So Hall's like, well, it's a good problem to have, you know. So,
yeah, that's right.
But I can't believe writing that in high school. It's amazing, like the youthfulness of writing these big songs is crazy to me. So I'm going to ask you guys intimidation. So intimidation is so you had Randy California, and I don't believe you played in the band at the same time as him. Is that right, Al?
He was in the band when I joined, and we rehearsed together for a while, but Randy had some issues at the time and decided to leave. And so then the two original members, Ed Cassidy and John Locke, were deciding, well, should we continue? So, but we kept rehearsing the new songs that I was writing and John was writing.
Yeah.
And worked them up three-piece. And while they were still deciding what to do, and this sounds crazy when you think about it, but we actually went out and did a few gigs of Spirit as a trio before my brother joined. And Ed Cassidy, being from the old school of, you know, the jazz beatnik era, he liked the idea of a trio. Something about that, you know, kind of appealed to him.
Charm, there's certainly charm.
But then my brother, who was just 19 at the time, was playing in a band in Austin with Tommy Shannon and Uncle John Turner, who had recently left Johnny Winter. Yeah. And in a band called Cracker Jack, and also was a great keyboard player playing in that band that wrote Cold Shot with Stevie, or for Stevie later on, Mike Kindred. Anyway, John came out to visit. He came over to a rehearsal place, played with us, and the guys asked him to join. And so he joined just weeks really before we did the Feedback album. So anyway, I never got a chance to do gigs with Randy, but I'll tell you kind of an interesting thing. Later on, after Feedback came out, Randy invited me over to his apartment, and played me a cassette. He had a feedback where he had overdubbed some guitar parts on it, and he was interested in coming back into the band, which I thought would have been a great idea. Interestingly enough, his stepdad, Ed Cassidy, wasn't really into that at that moment. But anyway, I've forgotten what the question was or whether or not I've answered.
Well, I didn't get to it, so you're okay. But it was intimidation. So the intimidation questions, this for both of you guys, I think. So Randy had played with Jimi Hendrix, right? And so was Jimi Hendrix at the time such a big name that you were like, whoa, I'm gonna be playing with this, or I'm replacing it, or I'm working with this band where the guy was with Jimi Hendrix, or was your headspace not going there? And then for you, Snuffy, was for doing the Wonder Years, did they already have the opening where it's like, okay, we're going to try and rework some stuff here by a band called the Beatles and Joe Cocker singing it, and you're kind of like, yay, this sounds easy. So that's my question for both of you guys, is the coming into a gig, I guess, where you have these other guys where you're like, oh man.
Al with this, but I wanted to interject,
please,
that, John, Al, all these people were from Texas as well as I was. Yeah. And it's funny, we didn't ever meet there, but we actually connected in Los Angeles. But we're, everybody's talking about, it's all these Texas musicians, not Spirit, but all the people kind of that circled around us, and which is, I think, interesting, because I just picked up on it as you were talking. I was going, no, that's right, Al. We were all in Austin and Houston, and totally. I guess we just connected because of the roots, but it's funny that we were so many Texans all in a row there.
But you go first on his Wonder Years question, because I want to hear the answer too.
It's funny. I fell into this whole scoring thing because an agent approached me in Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, 1986, and said, listen, Ry Cooder's priced himself out of the business. Would you be interested in doing guitar scores? Now, I didn't even own an acoustic guitar then, and I was playing electric guitar, and I went up for a couple of movies and got close, but I didn't even have a reel where I'd written any music for film. All I had were guitar solos I played for other people. So when 30-something came up, they wanted to get a guy who was doing something different, and they saw everybody in town. It's a long or short I needed to get into, but absolutely by chance I got that gig, and Wonder Years was the next gig. And when Wonder Years came up, Wonder Years came on after the Super Bowl. It premiered after the Super Bowl in 1988, January of 88, and they had the opening set as a little help from my friends, and they had temp scored it all with a bunch of beautiful records, Simon and Garfunkel, all this kind of stuff, and I had to kind of step up and replace all that. Yeah, it was. So was it challenging? I figured they were going to find out I didn't have a clue what I was doing anyway. So talk about intimidation. I knew they were going to find out that I was an absolute fake, and I felt that way for about 15 years. So
a long time.
Yeah, it takes a long time to get that stuff that's ingrained in your brain out. And I finally realized at some point, 15 years into my career, when I actually lost an Emmy to somebody else, I realized that I was there at the table and I belonged to be at the table. So.
Well, do you think that you worked harder because you were like trying to make this work, or, you're stressed out about it happening? And do you think that you put more effort into it than needed to be?
I figured it was going to last a couple of years on the outside, and I knew I had to work twice as hard to be half as good. So I put in 14, 16 hours a day. Yeah. And I kept getting amazed that people would call because people liked the work. Nobody was doing acoustic guitar scores at that time. It was fresh. Now, if you'd have asked me to do a John Williams score and put a gun to my head, I'd had to say no, and you'd have to shoot me, because I'd had no schooling. I couldn't read music. I'd never taken a music course in college. But what I did have was a sensibility and an ear, which I really used primarily when I was working with Al. You know, he would show us a song and I'd just kind of do what I could do to it, right, Al? That was about it.
I tell you, when I listen back to this stuff after having not listened to it for a while, I'm amazed at some of the stuff that you and the other guys added to these songs that I wrote. In fact, one of my favorite things is on Chippin Away, to listen to your solo on that, and then Al Garth comes in with his fiddle, and then right at the end of that, you two guys do a thing together. That's one of my favorite moments on this whole record. So, but I tell you, I'm so proud of Snuffy, because back in those days, I mean, it was obvious he was an incredible electric guitar player. But if you would have asked me, okay, of the guys, you know, who ended up being the TV music guy, you know, I would have never thought Snuffy, because I mean, he's balls to the wall guitar player. I mean, those are keyboard guys that do that movie music stuff, you know. Yeah. So I think it's so cool that it worked out the way it did.
I was blessed.
Well, we all do. You wrote some really great stuff, man. It's good. Al, you didn't answer the question though.
Intimidated by joining Spirit.
These lawyers, you got to be careful, Snuffy. You got to watch him, man. Keep him on his toes. So what it was joining Spirit. And my question initially was like Randy, California, and it could be a different scenario. It could be honestly Keith Moon if you want, where you're going to write a track for somebody big like that, or actually, I don't even know how that came about.
I mean, I knew that the chance of joining Spirit was, or at least that to me, it was a big deal. Mm-hmm. And so kind of like Snuffy saying that, you know, he put his nose to the grindstone. That's what I did too, because I knew, I mean, I wasn't a guitar player, so I wasn't competing. Yeah, I mean, I wrote on guitar, but I wasn't competing with Randy as the next, or wasn't going to be a twin guitar player like the Allman Brothers or something, you know. My job was to write, sing, and play bass. Well, and I had some songs, but I moved into a studio apartment, a block from Venice Beach, and got up every morning and started writing songs. And interestingly enough, when I think about it, a lot of those songs on that Feedback album were written on bass. I come up with a bass riff and then start singing to it. And, you know, for you young rock and rollers out there, writing on bass is actually a pretty good thing, because what I learned about that is if you lay down you got the bass part built into the song works out very easily, because the drums have to find something that fits with that. But anyway, back to your point, I was intimidated not by Randy in particular, but just the opportunity, and it's kind of determined to live into it, you know, sort of like Snuffy did.
You know, I might add here that a dear friend of mine, Steve Perry, wrote a lot of those Journey hits on bass.
Really?
And, yeah, he used to talk to me about it because he couldn't play a guitar, but he could play that one note. So.
I wonder if it's because you look cool playing a bass.
Snuffy, I don't know if you remember, do you remember down at Haji Sound when Steve Perry was hanging around?
When he was sweeping up?
Yeah, and he was, I think he was trying to put together a band with you and...
Tim Bogart and Carmen, the drummer, Carmen Appice or whatever his name is.
And Joel, dig this.
Like
I say, Snuffy and I were playing around town, you know, and we'd make like $30 a man playing the Starwood. And Steve was a sad guy kind of hanging around the studio at Haji, and because he was hoping to get this band together and it wasn't working. And I think he even sang background vocals on one of my
demos. You said that the other day.
But if he did, I can't remember which ones. I didn't want to put his name on there if he didn't. But one day he called me and said, "No, I see you guys are playing at the Starwood. Can I come sing background vocals with you?" And I said, "Man, that'd be great." I said, "Except we make like $30 a man. You'd have to rehearse, and I can't ask these guys to take any less than $30 a man. I don't want to ask you to do it for free, you know. So, and it could be, I'm not sure, but it could be that Alex Casanegris, who owned the studio, may have been the one who suggested him to Journey, because Alex had engineered a previous Journey album or two before Steve joined the band. But anyway, that's another story.
How'd you get Crazy Like a Fox into Keith Moon's hands, or how did that all come about?
Just dumb luck on that one. I was at, this was after my brother joined JoJo Gunne. I was at a JoJo Gunne recording session, and John Stronach was the engineer, and he happened to mention that he was getting ready to start a Keith Moon album the next week. And I said, who's producing? And he said, Mal Evans. And I said, the Beatles roadie? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, do they have all the songs? He said, I don't think so. I said, well, I'd like to pitch something to him. And said, well, come on down to the record plant on Wednesday. I'll introduce you to Mal. And so I went home, I wrote one song specifically for the event, but I also had this other song called Crazy Like a Fox. I thought, oh, that might work for Keith. And so I played him the one that I specially wrote, and he said, oh, I don't know. And I played him Crazy Like a Fox. And he said, okay, I could hear Keith doing that. We'll cut it on Friday. This was Wednesday.
Oh.
and the way song plugging should always be, and has never been since for me. But anyway,
super fun song.
Well, and I tell you, it was fun watching him do it. And
oh, so you watched him record it?
Oh, well, I played on. Well, okay. Here's the next part.
Yeah, we got.
I said, well, do you have the musicians for the session? He said, no. I said, well, of course, I know the song, but I said, also my brother, who plays in JoJo Gunne, he knows the song. He said, oh, why don't we get all of JoJo Gunne to play on it? So I called their guys up. You want to do a Keith Moon session on Friday? And they said, of course. So
did they pay you guys for the session?
Oh, yeah. This was.
Oh, you killed it.
This is, well, not only that, after that, they invited me. I ended up playing about half the album. So I got to meet Ringo. He came down one day, and a bunch of other people, and Bobby Keys. But on that session, in addition to JoJo Gunne, I was playing acoustic 6-string. Spencer Davis was sitting next to me playing acoustic 12-string.
Oh, neat.
My brother was playing electric, and Jesse Ed Davis was playing electric. Although the solo you hear on the record is my brother, not Jesse. And Keith on a set of drums, and Curly Smith on a set of drums, all on the basic track. That's the way they wanted to record it.
Wow.
No idea about that, Al.
And so we got, and then, you know, Keith had just heard the song, I guess, the day before. So I wrote the lyrics out, put it on a music stand, got out there with him, had the headphones on. I was kind of cueing him where to come in. And he's out there with a bottle of Cavassier in his left hand, kind of reeling around. And I'm cueing him, and he's not really singing, but he's being Keith Moon all over the record. You know, she's crazy like a fox, and that fox got her eyes on you. You know, and so then they called me back for more sessions. I got my girlfriend and I. You remember Julia Snuffy went up to Keith's house for dinner one night. You know, his girlfriend was that really beautiful Danish girl that was on the cover of the record with him. And so got to know him a little bit, you know, and heard some stories, and got to play on about half the record. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So was he all drunk at dinner too, or was he good?
You know, it was interesting. He was very much the English gentleman when we went up there. And I don't know if my girlfriend at the time was English and had gone to English girls' school, and I guess had a proper accent. So I don't know if if that influenced the way he behaved. But he was, I remember him being very gentlemanly and with his girlfriend there and my girlfriend.
That's nice. It's good to see a different side. You know, you just hear all the nuttiness a lot with certain people. It's nice to hear that there is a little bit of
well, he
normality.
he did tell me one story when he was doing the Tommy movie. He and what was the actor, the rough and tumble actor that was in it? I think of it in a minute. Anyway, they took a break from the movie and they were in costume and makeup and went to Oliver Reed. That's what I'm thinking of. He and Oliver Reed went across from the studio to the local pub, and apparently some locals were giving him some shit, and I guess because they were in costume and makeup, and some guy came over and pinned his hand to the table with an ice pick, and it's severed a ligament or something. And I said, well, I was wondering, why are you not playing drums more on your own album? Because he played some, but not that much, He said, oh, well, this hand's kind of, and then he told me that story. And I said, you are Keith Moon, and wouldn't it be kind of a good idea to see a hand specialist? But,
So he got in a fight with the guy and the guy stuck an ice pick through his hand?
that's what he said. Yeah, that's what he said. Said pinned his hand to the table.
Wow.
But I don't know. I
That's,
haven't heard anybody else tell that story before, but that's what he's told me.
I was going to give you crap. I was going to be like, so you left the music industry to go into law. Was it for more cocaine?
Ah,
But,
that wasn't Al's thing.
No.
Al was the straight one around that group, I'm afraid.
well, not as straight as you're making me out to be.
I wanted to be a lawyer when I was a little kid. I thought Judge Wapner was the coolest guy in town, man. And then I went to work at a law firm when I was 17, and I was like, get me out of here.
Yeah,
This is
really.
not what I thought it was.
I won't tell you the whole story, but first of all, I was already a lawyer when I joined Spirit.
Right.
Because what happened was, when undergraduate school, I was in a band with 2 law students. We were making money on weekends, and they already had families. It was time for them to graduate. It was time for me to graduate. I was pre-med, actually. And they said, no, you can't do that because you'll have to leave Austin and break up the band. We have 1 more year of law school left. Go to law school with us to keep the band together. And so I went to law school to keep the band together, because I couldn't just hang out because Vietnam was going on and I get drafted. So I started law school thinking, okay, I'll go 1 year. Realize I've been tricked, because if you finish the first year, you might as well finish. That's the killer year.
I read that you said that the first year was the hardest year, but I always been told that the third year is the one that's tough.
I don't know. Or maybe I was just the most afraid in the first year, because I didn't think I could do it. So, well, it's probably that I worked the hardest on the first year because I was afraid, because I made the best grades the first year and grades went down after that. So
more fun. So are you friendly with Timothy Busfield, Snuffy?
Sure. Talk to Timmy all the time.
It's super random. I'm drunk in a bar years and years ago, and I'd made a movie, and I'm bitching about the film industry to this guy at the bar. I didn't know it was Timothy. I didn't know who he was. I'm bitching away, and he goes, "Yeah, I did some stuff in film." I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's because you live in LA and everybody's fucking ass. And I'm just going on and on. And he was so nice about it, man. He was so nice. And then at the end, it was a friend. And she's like, "Do you know who that guy is?" And I'm like, "No." He said he directed something or something. So
But he was starting 30-something.
Well, that's why I brought it up. That's why I brought it up.
But I worked with him on West Wing. I scored a little film for him. He was teaching back in the Midwest, teaching filmmaking. And I scored a little film for him that he made with his students and with his wife, Melissa. And, he's a sweetheart.
He's a
beautiful
super nice guy. Yeah, it was just, I saw him again at the bar and I was just like, hey, I didn't know you're like, you actually really do this for a living. I was just drunk. And he's like, no, you're whatever. It's all good.
We had big Malibu fires one year, and I live out pretty close to where he lived, but he overlooked Malibu. Mm-hmm. And he and his wife were gone, and the fires raged up there. And he's never let me forget it, that I went up, I said, I'll go check on your house. And I went up in the fires and checked on his house, and that it was okay. And he's always, that's the story he always tells about me. Not that I play guitar, not that Actually, Timmy's in a documentary they're releasing about me on December 1st called Up to Snuff. Timmy's one of the people in it. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. So.
Hey, Snuffy, where are we going to be able to see your documentary?
It'll be streaming on the streaming sites. You just look up to Snuff. You know what? I agreed to do it only because I thought I could be of some service to people who, struggle like I did with drugs and alcohol, and then ended up with this whole second career. So I'm not involved in the sale, distribution, any of that.
All right. Roseanne. I wanted to bring up Roseanne because just from looking at the portfolio or listening to the portfolios of your music that I was finding, it seems very different than a lot of the other stuff you put together. I get it. You're going for a vibe, but you brought in like a lot of different instruments I didn't hear on other stuff. Was this instruction or inspiration or both?
No. There's a tricky story to that. The first couple of years of Roseanne was scored by two other guys. And their mind escapes me right now. But they wrote the original theme and the original arrangement of all that stuff and kind of brought blues to Roseanne, that real kind of gutty blue collar thing. And then Tom Arnold and Roseanne got married, and Tom Arnold was a real good friend of mine. He's in the documentary as well. And so Tom said, come do this show. Yeah, he's crazy.
He's so funny.
But he came to me, he said, come do this show. So the other guys were never very happy. I just took over their show and did 5 or 6 years of it. But I basically took their format, which was sax and slide guitar and harmonica, and I took it and molded it into more guitar, harmonica, more electric blues based, so that I'd play more. I just kind of changed it a little bit, and we went back toward the later years closer to the original sound, but it wasn't my choice at the very beginning. I wish I could take credit for it. I wish I could get all the royalties for it, but but that's what happened, and I came in and did the rest of the.
I was so bad. What I figured out is, and I hope this isn't offensive. So what I would do is I would listen to the opening song of Cheers, and if I switched it quick enough, I could just get the tail end of the song of Roseanne and watch Roseanne instead of Cheers, because I like the show so much better.
You didn't like the Roseanne theme?
Well, I didn't. It's not that I disliked it. I loved the Cheers song. I thought, I don't know.
Well, hey, you know what? I didn't write that either, but I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. Okay. So when I was going to put together a podcast, I was at my friend's house, and his daughter's in 5th grade. And she said I should ask all of my guests a question. And the question was, when did you first feel famous? And it's been a good one. So it doesn't have to be fame. If you don't want to go down that road, that's perfectly fine. But what moment then would you choose that would be a defining moment in each of your careers that would be worth telling somebody?
Well, for me, I mean, I guess one moment that is kind of hard to beat is when I was in Spirit and we headlined Carnegie Hall.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll tell you something funny about that is, see, that was in 72. Well, in the summer of 69, I worked for the summer in New York for ASCAP. And I got to be friendly with Ron Delsener as being the guy from ASCAP who came down to all his shows at the Wallman Rink that he put on Sly and the Family Stone. Everybody played this original Jeff Beck group. Any rate, it turns out Ron Delsener, I didn't know it either, was promoting the show we did at Carnegie Hall. Well, if you've ever been backstage at Carnegie Hall, it's upstairs, and as you're coming down the stairs, it's down this stairway. And so as I'm coming down to get on stage, Ron Delsener and I is coming up. We meet on the stairway. He does a double take, and he said, "I didn't know you were in this band." I said, "Yeah, I'm working for you tonight." He just knew me as the guy from ASCAP a few years before. But now here's the lesson for the youngsters out there. Okay, that was the high point. And I'm thinking that era I'm with Spirit, isn't it great? I'll never have to do clubs anymore. I'm always going to be able to do concerts. Well, the band breaks up a year or two later and no longer have that name. And I found myself doing talent night at the Troubadour on Monday nights, where they give you 20 minutes to play it. In fact, Snuffy and I may have done that together. I think.
All right.
But so, you know, a lot of ups, a lot of downs.
That's his life.
You know, Joel, I have two moments that come up because I had two careers.
Yeah.
You know, I had the one when I was in this band Stray Dog, and Emerson, Lake and Palmer signed us, and we did a world tour with them, played 50,000 seater soccer stadiums in Italy. But I really didn't feel like I had arrived because, you know, we were a cult band. We didn't have hit records. I remember when we played Madison Square Garden 2 nights in 1974, I guess, maybe 75. I can't remember. I think it's 74. Played 2 nights there right before Christmas. And, you know, it's pretty hard not to get off on playing 2 nights in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
But then 2 days later, I got fired off the tour. So, you know, so much for that long-lived fame. But the one thing that really stuck out for me in my composing career was I'd been doing it about 10 years, and I wrote a score to Stephen King's The Stand, a miniseries.
Yeah.
And I was up for an Emmy for the score, and I was sitting at a table with all these other composers, and they announced the winner, and it was the guy sitting next to me. And I stood up and I started applauding, and I realized in that moment, for the first time, I felt like I belonged at the table.
That's great.
And that's when I really felt like, wow, it's okay. You know, this is good. This is a high moment. And that's something that stuck out to me in my entire composing career. That moment where it wasn't about winning. It was about being part of.
Yeah. Did he push you out of the way to go get his award?
No, he's the guy who scored all the Clint Eastwood movies. I mean, he's a great composer.
Oh, come on. Yeah. I mean, wow.
But, you know, that was a huge moment for me. A huge moment of, if nothing else, self-acceptance.
Yeah. Oh, it's a good one. What about working for Eric Burdon? I mean, that's pretty cool. I love Eric Burdon. I'm such a big fan.
I worked with Eric back in the days. Eric was the last tour I was on before I got sober.
Who's also in your documentary, by the way.
Oh, yeah, Eric's in there.
Yeah.
Eric talks about how crazy I was. You know, we did that was great. Eric always gave me freedom. Same with Chaka. She gave me the same freedom, but Eric was just all vibe. And you walk on stage and, you know, you didn't get notes. It was just like, go for it. And it was really freeing. I mean, I wish I'd been sober, then I probably learned a lot more.
You toured with Chaka Khan as well, or?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't
That's
know.
in the documentary as well. But yeah, I toured with Chaka once I got sober. And right up until 1987, when I started scoring television, I was musical director for Laura Branigan and Chaka Khan, and, you know, did a bunch of different things. So,
God, could she sing? You know, it's tough on this because you talk about a lot of the same artists, and it's like, whoa, really, they were so good, and you sound like an idiot because it's like, yeah, of course they're good, but there's just certain people, or there's certain tracks, or there's something just stands out to you a little more sometimes. And oh, she had so much just flavor to her voice.
Yeah.
It's just so layered. It's wonderful.
Beautiful.
So, speaking of awesomeness here, Patti Dahlstrom, how did you start working with this fine lady that I got to listen to last night for a little while?
I'm going to have her watch this podcast because she's
she'll be happy. I hope
giving her some love.
Yeah, because what I read was like, yeah, you know, I really thought she should have been bigger. I'm like, oh, what kind of crap is that? She did good. What the hell? Who's this guy? You know, she wrote some stuff from all these people. So I was like, huh.
Well, believe it or not, I knew Patti from college, university. She's from Houston, and she was a few years behind me in school, but she came down to the University of Texas, and her big sister was dating a guy I knew. And so, and Patti would always come to hear my band play, and we'd let her get up and sing a song. She was really into Marianne Faithfull, so she would kind of get up and sing As Tears Go By, or whatever that Marianne Faithfull song was. And she just decided, she dropped out of school and said, I'm going to go to LA and be a songwriter. And really, I don't know if she even knew anybody out there. She went out there, she got a gig as a writer for Motown. So she was, interestingly enough, yeah, she was signed as a songwriter for Motown, then got a record deal with Uni, Russ Regan's, when he was running the label, and did an album that Michael Amardian produced, and I think that was her boyfriend at the time too for a while. And then Spirit had broken up, so I did a tour. In fact, it was the only tour she ever did. This was kind of, if you heard her stuff, you heard what it's like. It's solo, very delicate kinds of things. And it was kind of interesting because her band on the road was me, fresh out of Spirit on bass.
Oh.
Michael Knust, the guitar player from Fever Tree. It's Mark Stein from the Vanilla Fudge on keyboards.
Oh, great.
And
Was she connected to Fever Tree because of Houston?
yeah, she knew Michael
wow.
from Houston. And this guy named Steve Lawrence, who was the drummer on Nutbush City Limits, I Cantina. Anyway, so here we are. The band was trying to be real delicate with it. There would always be like one song or so towards the end where we could kind of let it out a little bit. But we had a good time on that tour. But she didn't like to tour much. She hadn't worked. She didn't grow up being a performer. She was a songwriter who then, it's kind of like the Carole King thing, where then started performing. But she didn't really push to perform. And I think if she had, things would have been better, because the record companies kept believing it. Well, Russ Regan went over to 20th Century and signed her again. And so she ended up doing maybe 3 albums for 20th, one for Uni. I don't know. She got to do quite a few albums, and we wrote 4 or 5 or 6 songs together. She was a lyricist primarily, so she'd give me a lyric and I'd work on it. And actually, the only song that she ever had make the charts, single charts, was one called "He Did Me Wrong, But He Did It Right," which we wrote. And then Bobbie Gentry did it, and then black group Hodges, James and Smith, but it didn't ever become a hit for anybody. But at any rate, that's a little bit of the Patti Dahlstrom story. And
I've had some winners. What odd gigs have you guys had that that you remember? So you were playing at a strip club, I had read, Snuffy. So that's come up a few times, by the way.
Where was that, Snuffy?
Yeah. That's the Cellar Club they're talking about, Al, down in Market Square in Houston and in Fort Worth and in Dallas. Yeah, I played those joints. The gig that comes up with Al, I always think of that little place at the beach we used to play. And I remember more about nights playing there than I remember about any of our bigger gigs.
Was it Shenanigans?
Yeah,
Shenanigans in Hermosa Beach.
Hermosa Beach, right.
We had some good gigs there. In fact, do you remember one night, I forget the guy's name, but the sax player from lived upstairs. It was from that.
Oh, right. He had a studio upstairs, didn't he?
Yeah, he was from that big English group that now I'm blanking out on, but he came down and sat in with us.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah, he's a great player, and he joined, it was an English or an Australian group. I can't remember.
But what really was interesting to me about Shenanigans, I mean, it was a place that wasn't like a listening room. It was a place that I think cover bands played a lot and stuff. And we go down there and we'd play, I think, all original material, unless we did a couple of covers, and they always dug it. And that's what always kind of gave us validity that, hey, this stuff is, it was always kind of frustrating that you had to try to convince an A&R guy when you could see real human beings out there digging it, but yeah, you had to get the blessing at that time from the A&R community.
So real quick, I'll try and be a bit concise about it because you teach courses on this. But to go into law, I'm a brand new writer. I'm writing music. Is it important for me to copyright each one of my songs? Is it important for me to immediately join ASCAP or BMI? Is it important for me to get on Sound Exchange? Do you like TuneCore? What would you say for a young person who is just getting going? What are the things that you would say you should look into immediately and learn about on the law side?
As ASCAP, BMI, the Performing Rights Societies, and Sound Exchange are only relevant if you have music out to sell. And ASCAP, BMI, they collect for writers and publishers. Sound Exchange does not collect for writers and publishers. They collect for artists and the owners of the sound recordings, which are usually the record company. But if you're releasing it on your own, then you are the record company. So a lot of times people don't understand that distinction. So that's important once you start putting your music out there. But even before you put your music out, if you're out there playing it live or getting it around on the internet or however, you should register the copyrights with the U.S. Copyright Office. It's not that expensive. And even though the copyright law came into effect when it got changed in 78, says when you fix your song in a medium, even if you sing it into your iPhone or whatever, you're protected. Okay, yes, you're protected, but the reason you should still register it is because if someone does intentionally infringe your copyright and you have it properly registered, you can threaten them with their downside is up to $150,000 per infringement. Whereas if you haven't registered it, you may win the lawsuit, but then the second phase of the trial is, okay, what's the damage issue? How much were you damaged? Well, maybe
Because the burden of proof shifts as well because of who's holding the copyright.
Yeah. So then, like I said, then you got to prove. So basically, what's going to happen is unless you can prove significant damage, you're not going to sue anybody. But if you can, if you can threaten them with the potential downside of $150,000 per infringement, they usually want to settle. So
yeah.
So.
All right. I just figure it might be a good question for people on the get-go here and get them going their way. I appreciate your guys' time. Snuffy, I will be looking up your documentary and find it online. I found it quite easily, so it's there. And Al, I know your stuff is on Spotify because I may have listened to it recently and enjoyed it. But is there any other place that you would like us to go check out stuff?
I just might add before you can finish, Al,
Please.
That we've been threatening to play some gigs. So just
I know some spots.
Keep in touch.
All right. So Al, where can I find your stuff?
You can go to alstaehley.com. The only trick about that is spelling Staehley. So if you can figure that out.
Actually, I think you had an album where you wrote that out, didn't you?
Yeah, we made an attempt to try to do it phonetically, but even that didn't work.
Yeah, it didn't help out. It's funny, you'll say people nicknames like, does anybody not call you Snuffy? And it's like lawyers, accountants, legal representatives, any kind of mail that comes.
Call me William, yeah.
The doctors do. Yeah, anybody you don't really want to hear news from.
Right.
They're the ones who know your name. Well, guys, I really do appreciate your time. Thank you for it. I look forward to talking to you guys again.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe by clicking the round button on the bottom right. To learn more about me or the guests on the show, go to joelrohde.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok. The handle's Joel Rohde. And don't forget, when you party like a rock star, don't be a dick.